Indonesia's former President Soeharto is dead. The man who exercised ruthless control over his nation for 3 decades died in a Jakarta hospital late today. He was revered by his people for turning Indonesia into an economic power, but was also reviled for the tyranny and corruption that underpinned the transformation. Jakarta correspondent Jeff Thompson looks back.
Except during trips to the hospital to treat his ailing health, Soeharto has rarely been seen beyond his home in recent years. A figure much diminished from his days of towering authority when he rose to become king in all but name. Soeharto ruthlessly crushed his opponents and reduced those who served him to unquestioning instruments of his will. His beginnings were humble. The son of a peasant farmer, Soeharto's only schooling was at primary level. It was his service in the military which carried him to within reach of power. In 1965, as Indonesia careered through its year of living dangerously, Major General Soeharto seized his moment. The nation's founding father, President Sukarno, had led his young country to a precipice. A failed coup attempt, allegedly by communists, pushed it over the edge. It was Soeharto who emerged from these still murky events to take control.
I, President, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Indonesia, appoint Major General Soeharto.
Within a year, the charismatic Sukarno was swept aside to make way for his dour successor. These were among Indonesia's darkest days. A massive bloodletting, carried out with Suharto's approval, left at least 500,000 people dead. The killing was done in the name of an anti-communist purge, but many with no political ties also perished. In the past 50 years, there have been few more shocking crimes against humanity. And Soeharto was hardly the bystander he later made himself out to be.
It's my view that he shares at least a substantial guilt insofar as he certainly prompted at least some measure of the early attacks by the armed forces on the Communist Party, especially in Central Java.
But this was the height of the Cold War, and Western powers, including Australia, turned a blind eye. Suharto's staunch anti-communism and his willingness to listen to prudent economic advice made him a favourite of the West. After years of grinding poverty, Indonesia started down the road to food sufficiency and industrial development. In all, Soeharto notched up 3 decades of economic growth and, with the military at his side, brought stability to this unwieldy archipelago. His attempts to carve out a niche for himself on the international stage, however, were thwarted by the brutal occupation of East Timor in 1975, which kept Indonesia on the defensive in the United Nations. And by the early 1990s, Suharto's authoritarian and increasingly corrupt rule was swelling the ranks of his opponents at home as well. Ordinary Indonesians deeply resented the overweening greed of his children, who turned the Soeharto name into a multi-billion-dollar franchise. And the following year he was forced from office, amid widespread violence and political drama. Soeharto promised to lay foundations that would secure Indonesia's future. Instead, he bequeathed his people a house of cards. He remains accused of being one of the 20th century's worst kleptocrats, amassing billions of dollars for himself, his family, and a network of cronies. But the ill health which has taken Soeharto's life at the age of 86 also kept him out of the courts since 1998. As civil proceedings continue to recover state assets, the fallen strongman recently tasted victory once more, when he won a $147 million defamation suit against Time magazine. Jeff Thompson, ABC News, Jakarta.